Hi, this is Andrea. In this video, I will explain why I'm convinced that the worst food I could give to my mom, who suffers from dementia and Alzheimer's symptoms, is carbohydrates and sugar. Hold on, don't stop the video. I know what you're thinking. I know you're probably rolling your eyes and say, "Oh, come on, give me a break, Andrea. The carbohydrates." Yes, the carbohydrates. So hear me out. And by the way, this is not nutritional advice. I am not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I am just sharing my experience and my opinions. Do your own research. Okay, so let's start listening to Dr. Bredesen.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Let's work from the biochemistry side. Then we'll talk about if you want to end up with perfect brain function, here's what you need to do that. Okay. So for good brain function, you want to be able to have some ketosis. So you want to have a mildly ketotic diet. Do you check your ketones and are you driving yourself into mild ketosis? So the thing is that your brain functions, it's got to have energy. And you get two types. You can either metabolize glucose or you can metabolize ketones. That's what your mitochondria use in your brain. And good brain function is a lot about energetics, as we talked about before. And by the way, Alzheimer's is a lot about poor energetics, poor mitochondria, poor evaluation. So what happens is so many of us, we should be metabolically flexible. You should be able to go back and forth. You have some carbs, you metabolize that. The next meal, you have a lot of fats. You metabolize ketones, which come from the metabolism of the fats, and you go back and forth. That's where you want to be. For so many of us, though, we're purely on the carbs.
So here, Dr. Bredesen was explaining the first piece of the brain energy puzzle. Our brain, the mitochondria in all the cells of our brain, can use only two fuels to produce energy: glucose and ketones. What are ketones? You might be asking. Let's check. Diabetes Teaching Center at the University of California. What are ketones? So ketones and keto acids are alternative fuels for the body that are made when glucose is in short supply. They are made in the liver from the breakdown of fats. So basically, when you are in a fasting state and your glucose drops, then your insulin finally drops. When the insulin drops, then your body can do a metabolic switch and can start liberating fatty acids from the fat cells. These fatty acids then can be used by all your body for the production of energy, and in particular in the liver, when they are oxidized, they also produce ketones or ketone bodies. And these ketone bodies enter the bloodstream and then they are available to all our cells as fuel for production of energy. Let's now hear from Dr. Bredesen about insulin.
Insulin is not only the thing that it deals with glucose, of course, it's an energy-related hormone, but it's also quite an important growth factor for brain cells. And unfortunately, what happens to us is we are exposed to high carb diets, low fiber diets, high glycemic loads, and so we put out all this insulin for years, and therefore we end up developing. You have insulin resistance, and you can check. Everyone should know their HOMA-IR. This is a simple calculation to tell you whether you have insulin resistance. If you do, you are at increased risk for cognitive decline, and you're probably not as sharp as you should be.
Okay, so this was another piece of the puzzle, insulin resistance. So with insulin resistance, your cells cannot metabolize glucose properly. So think of it in this context as in the brain, you have two fuels, ketones and glucose. If you are insulin resistant, your cells cannot use glucose, even if glucose is available. Very important information. Now, let's look at the last piece, the beta amyloid plaques. Let's hear what Dr. Bredesen has to say about that.
The exact same thing is happening in your brain when you have these various insults. Then what happens is you change the signaling from one of growth and maintenance, keeping and making memories, to one of protection. You're now in a protective downsizing mode. You are losing synapses. Your brain is saying, I'm under assault. I can survive by being less of a brain. I'm going to be a smaller brain. I'm going to have fewer synapses. I'm not going to be able to have the same degree of neuroplasticity, but I will be able to survive. And so it's now making the amyloid that is killing, by the way, the bacteria and things like that. This was shown a number of years ago by Professors Robert Moyer and Rudy Tanzi from Harvard. You look at so you look at this as a protective mode. Now, just as you said, as long as you keep the insult, you keep making that scab over and over, you keep having the insults, you're going to downsize.
Okay, so this was the last piece of the puzzle. In particular, Dr. Brezen was talking about the amyloid plaques, which are currently believed to be like the cause of Alzheimer's. He's saying that actually the amyloid plaques are formed as a protective mechanism because there are insults. And you should refer to Dr. Brezen for all the sources of these insults. Today we're talking about sugar. High glucose is one of the insults that damages the brain and causes the formation of the amyloid plaques. Okay, so let's try to summarize all of this, starting from the ingestion of carbohydrates and sugars. Okay, so when a person that is suffering with dementia and Alzheimer's symptoms ingests carbohydrates and sugars, those get absorbed as glucose and fructose. The glucose will raise insulin, and when insulin is high, your body will do a metabolic switch and will stop producing ketones, the alternative fuel that all your body, but in particular your brain, needs. Number one. Number two, it will raise blood glucose. Raising blood glucose means causing damage, inflammation, amyloid plaques, and other stuff in the body. High insulin, high glucose in the brain means brain fog, confusion. And lastly, fructose, which was not talked about in the video that I showed you, has a number of issues in the liver, but in particular in this context will cause mitochondrial dysfunction. So inflammation in the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are your little engines in your cells that produce energy. So as a result, when a person eats carbohydrates and sugars and they are metabolically compromised in the brain, then despite the high amount of glucose available, the brain will not be able to use it. It will be inflamed and starved. Starved because it cannot use the glucose, and there are no ketones available because your body cannot produce the ketones. It's a big disaster. So, if you're a caregiver, next time the person you're taking care of has a crisis, depression, anxiety, panic, severe memory loss more than usual, confusion, being lost, etc., think of what they ate a few hours before that. It might be the carbs. All right. So you might be thinking now, but which carbs? Not all of them, right? I love the carbs. Okay, so let's go into it. It is all the carbs. Let's start from the most damaging ones. Any processed food containing fructose or table sugar or high fructose corn syrup, donuts, pastries, ice creams, candies, cereals, cookies, all that stuff. That stuff is deadly. Cut the stuff out completely. Then any processed food that contains glucose, pasta, bread, bagels, any flour product, corn or grain product. Cut those out completely. Then any unprocessed food that contains starch should be also limited. Potatoes, peas, beans, corn, those are whole foods, but they contain a lot of carbohydrates, glucose. It's what is damaging your brain. Either cut it out completely or limit the consumption, both in quantity and in frequency. And lastly, any unprocessed food that contains fructose. And basically, this is fruit. I know you're thinking, oh, fruit is healthy. Fruit is full of sugar. In the context of a metabolically ill brain, not good. Either cut it out completely or limit quantity and frequency. And choose low glycemic fruits, like, for example, berries, raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries. Well, now, at this point, you might be thinking, oh my God, what can they eat? All the whole natural nutrient dense foods. So, all the meats, all the fish, all the eggs, all the fermented dairy, so all the cheese, kefir, yogurt. I would avoid milk. Milk is very good, but it has a lot of lactose. So it's the milk sugar, it's glucose and galactose. And the non starchy vegetables, they're free. And then tree nuts and maybe dark chocolate and a few other little things. Now, let me call out a trap that we all fall into. I fell into as well. Every time a person with dementia or Alzheimer's symptoms wants to eat like sweets or like the refined carbohydrates, we tend to allow them to do it. Maybe it's their birthday and we have cake and stuff like that. And we think, oh, come on, they already in this condition, they're aging, let them live a little bit, let them enjoy at least this little treat. No, that is profoundly misguided and flawed because that kind of food is the food that participated in the onset of the condition and is currently making the condition worse. So while you're thinking, oh, let them enjoy a little bit their life, you are actually doing exactly the opposite. You're making them more miserable. Okay, now let me tell you how I'm approaching this with my mom. It's not easy, and you cannot do it from one day to the other. It needs to be like a step by step kind of approach. But the goal is at every meal, focus on whole, natural, nutrient dense foods. Then remove from the house all the processed garbage that contain any refined carbohydrate and any sugar, including fruit. Remove all the fruit. My mom, for example, likes to start the day with an orange juice. Orange juice is sugar water and then supervise them when they go out. Because, for example, my mom, when she goes out and she's alone, she wants to eat ice cream, cookies, pastries, and stuff like that. It's a disaster. Somebody needs to supervise and enforce. And then lastly, measure. Measure glucose and ketones as much as possible every day. So we as a family implemented this plan a few months ago with great results. Cognitive abilities, short term memory, both improved tremendously. Even if we weren't strict, then we couldn't keep it up, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons. And my mother started worsening again because she started eating all that stuff again. So now I've decided to take a leave from work and be with her for the next few months. I will be the enforcer. Okay, lots of information in this video. I hope it was useful. I hope it was thought provoking. I hope I gave you some new information. Definitely search for Dr. Bredesen. Listen to everything he has to say. I'm just giving you a slice of his knowledge. There is a lot more information I will be posting in the next few days and weeks. So stay tuned. Until the next video. Bye now.